Fun night of hoops with some thrilling endings. We'll break down a wild finish to Lakers Clippers, Trae Young knocking off the Suns, and look at some of the most impactful players acquired at the trade deadline. It's Friday here on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On NBA. I'm Wes Goldberg here with Adam Mares. However you may be listening on YouTube, Odyssey, or wherever you get your podcast, thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Adam, how's it going?
It's good, man. This was a great night of hoops. You never know. Some nights we get the super late ones. Some nights we get the bad games. Tonight, we got regular hours, and we got a couple of really, really good games to talk about.
Well, we're actually going to start in LA where the Clippers led by 17 points, and it didn't look like it was going to be a good game. The Lakers were down early. They were without LeBron James. Carmelo Anthony, who started hot, goes out with a hamstring injury in the middle in the first half. But the Lakers climbed back into it and set up a wild ending. So here it is. The Lakers used a 12-2 run to cut the deficit to 2 with 5.5 left to play. Russell Westbrook's baseline jumper gave the Lakers a 1-point lead. Then the Clippers answered.
By the way, that was a big shot. You're going fast through this. Westbrook, much maligned, especially for that baseline mid-range jumper, which I feel like I've never seen go in, at least over the last 2 or 3 years. And he did hit it. And what I thought was going to be the game winner. Like when he hit that one, I was like, man, that might be the last bucket of the game.
And before that, he hit a 3 from the top of the key. That's and right. I'm like, what am I watching? I have no idea what I'm watching here. Clippers answer that. Malik Monk's 3 gives the lead back to the Lakers. Then Marcus Morris.
Another really big shot from Malik Monk. Like shot clock winding down. He had to get it up and just ice.
Ice in his veins. And he said, I have ice in my veins, or in so many words. There's curse words dropped into there. Marcus Morris answers with a 3 of his own from the corner. That puts the Clippers back up. And then Russell Westbrook connects with Anthony Davis on the lob out of the pick and roll. Lakers retake the lead. And then Reggie Jackson, with less than 30 seconds to go, skips down the court.
What was he doing?
Attacks Austin Reeves and drives to the hoop. I'll tell you what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. The Clippers go up 1, and then Anthony Davis has just enough time to dribble down the court and get a nice-looking floater up with 4 seconds to go. It rims out this close to the game winner. He's very clearly disappointed, but it's the Clippers who hang on. They beat the Lakers 111 to 110. Reggie Jackson finishes with 25 points. Marcus Morris with 29. Serge Ibaka returned from the dead. He has 20 points. Anthony Davis had 30 and 17. Westbrook finished with 17. Malik Monk had 21 for the Lakers. That game looked like it was a done deal early, like I said, but it was a thriller at the end, Adam.
Man, you going through it. I mean, there's so many little takeaways from it, but you going through the last sequence there is insane. Like I almost forgot half of those plays as I was watching it because it happened so quick. And by the way, part of what was so great about it was both teams used timeouts in between some of those plays and ran out of them. So we kind of got a back and forth and back at the end with no timeouts. But to me, the play I'll remember is going to be Reggie Jackson inexplicably skipping up the court with about, 15 seconds left, maybe less than that. You have to see the video clip. I mean, it's worth like looking up on Twitter or YouTube or wherever, because he's just skipping up the court. His clock is winding down. And then all of a sudden he gets to the corner. He gets trapped. He spins out of it like perfectly and lays it up. He made a very difficult play, not just look easy, but kind of fun, kind of ridiculous. And that was the end of a pressure filled, 30-second stretch. So it was a heck of a play and it was a heck of an ending.
Lance Stevenson is the king of skipping down the court. But he doesn't skip down the court like that, right? He's not skipping out the court with 26 seconds left, needing a basket. It wasn't a tie game. They needed a basket to win that game. Because if they lose, they're the team that blew the 16-point lead, 17-point lead. Reggie Jackson had to make that shot. And he's just like, it's like Wizard of Oz for him. I don't know what was happening. But you're right. Like that spin move was out of nowhere. I mean, he hit that X button like out of nowhere. And the Lakers were not prepared for it. After a make, they were just not really set on defense, which I found concerning if you're a Lakers fan, considering, time, score, and possession. But he hits that spin move. Anthony Davis is nowhere even close to the play. Malik Monk tries to come over with the weak side block attempt, but Reggie
No.
Jackson just put the sugar on it, and it went in, and it was a really nice play. But that final shot for Anthony Davis, I thought he nailed it. I thought
Yeah, I
it
did
was for
too.
sure going in. He had the timing perfect. He makes that 99 times out of 100.
I don't know if it's that. It was still a hard shot. Like he was leaning to the side. It was probably a 10-footer off my recollection. It might have been a 15-footer. It was still a tough shot, but I definitely thought it was in. I mean, it rimmed around the basket entirely before spilling out. And that was the way the cookie crumbles for both of these teams. The Battle of LA, which by the way was a true Battle of LA because these teams were fighting for the 8/9 seed, which is not what we expected coming into the year for them to be fighting for. But it was a meaningful game, and both of them have very difficult schedules going forward. But if I'm going to put a silver lining on this for the Lakers fans, and Wes, you know me, I'm always here to put silver linings on for the Los Angeles Lakers fans. But if I'm here to do that, Anthony Davis has now looked really good in several games in a row. 30 points, 17 rebounds. Those are monster numbers. 12 of 24 from the field. And, with the exception of that final play, he did have a lot of clutch moments, down the stretch of this. So he took that time off in the middle, obviously dealing with some injuries, but he looks to me more promising than he did at any point prior to that this season.
I think that's a good takeaway. And even though the Lakers lost, I sort of find myself thinking like, all right, if Anthony Davis is going to play like this and they're going to get LeBron back, and I don't know, the Russell Westbrook thing is still the Russell Westbrook thing. But if it's this Anthony Davis and it's LeBron that we saw before the injury, I still can't write off the Lakers. I still can't do it, right? But this is setting up to maybe be a play-in situation, and if it is, that would be interesting. Talk about the battle.
We might see these two teams, definitely a battle of LA for all the marbles, which would be really wild. But I talk about writing the Lakers off this. I don't know. I will say that their schedule does them no favors. They've got the Knicks coming up. By the way, they're on television 9 out of the next 10 games. This team that just keeps losing. They've lost 4 of their last 5. Don't have LeBron back yet, but they play the Knicks. Then they've got Milwaukee, Portland, Golden State, Utah, the Clippers. So you play a lot of really tough teams in a row here before the All-Star break. So the Lakers might find themselves in the 10 seed by the time they reconvene for this All-Star game.
They need the All-Star break. Speaking of All-Stars, Trae Young scored 43 points. The Hawks beat Phoenix 124-115 to end the Suns' 11-game win streak. As a team, the Hawks made 20 of 41 three-pointers, including 6 by Trae Young, whose final 3 made it a 9-point game with 37 seconds to go. Phoenix dropped to 41-10, losing for the first time, get this, since January 8th. Meanwhile, the Hawks have won 8 of their last 9 games.
Yes.
They've climbed into position for the play-in tournament. Adam, what do you think of Atlanta's recent surge?
They're on fire right now, and it's all not all. It's a lot of it has to do with Trae Young just being the best. I mean, he's been good all year, but he's been especially good here late. In fact, the one loss they had was the one game he sat out, this last one that he sat out. So really, you could say they've won the 8 in a row with him, and he was just fantastic. By the way, in that stretch, they have wins over Miami, Milwaukee, Minnesota, and now their best win of the season against the best team in basketball, the Phoenix Suns. 30 points per game. Trae Young is averaging over his last 10 on 42% from 3, and he was money again tonight with some really tough shots. So I'm not. The Hawks, I think, are back to looking like they did last year. Now they dug themselves a giant hole, so they're probably going to have to, like the Lakers, do things the hard way. But they definitely look like a team that if they're on the schedule coming up, you have to think of them like you thought of them last year, not the way you think of them this year.
This was Madison Square Garden Trae Young that we saw tonight, right? Like he gets up for these challenges. Chris Paul with great compliments to Trae Young after the game, calling him tough and a handful. I don't know if it gets better from Chris Paul. Look, I don't know that they're back to last year, but they've definitely made the right changes. And Onyeka Okongwu has been playing awesome for them. They've got Clint Capella back in the lineup. Switching Kevin Huerter into the starting lineup and taking Bogdanović out. It was more of an injury thing, but they've stuck with it since. And DeAndre Hunter has been giving them a lot of really good minutes too. So now you're starting to see this lineup sort of being fleshed out around Trae Young. Trae Young was awesome offensively all season long. Right. He's awesomer now, but he's been awesome all season long. The problem was defensively, and it feels like maybe some of that defensive stuff is starting to get cleaned up, I guess. And if they are, I don't know. I don't know that they're getting to the conference finals again. I think the East is deeper this year, but they're good. They're probably pretty good, and I don't think they're the team that you want to face if you're in the play-in round.
I don't know about the defense. I know about their offense. And tonight they put 100 points up in 3 quarters on the Phoenix Suns. That doesn't happen to Phoenix very often at all. So their offense tonight was humming in a way. And it makes me think, like, look, the Suns had an 11-game winning streak. They lost one. Like, that happens, right? This is why teams don't go on winning streaks that long too often. What I was sitting here as I was watching how Trae Young dismantled their pick and roll defense tonight.
Yes.
And I was thinking last year they go against the Los Angeles Lakers. Well, they don't have a pick and roll threat. They go up against the Denver Nuggets, who did not have Jamal Murray. They started Facundo Campazzo as the pick and roll threat, 5'9" rookie. They didn't have one. You go up against the Clippers, they have some players that, Reggie Jackson, who can score, although it's not really like a Trae Young type of scorer. And then, of course, you go into the finals and Milwaukee, who all have different styles. This is a pick and roll league, and they play 4 teams in the playoffs that aren't necessarily pick and roll teams, or at least didn't have pick and roll threats. Not saying there's any correlation there or anything to be, if you're a Suns fan, to be worried about. It's just when I was watching him tonight, I was like, wow, Trae Young really is making this look easy on this Phoenix Suns defense. And then I realized they hadn't played a player like him, at least last year in the playoffs.
Well, they had Mikal Bridges on Trae Young, who's one of the best wing defenders in the league. Didn't matter. Trae Young picked him apart. You're absolutely right. He's special. No doubt about it. Coming up, the Raptors get a big win over the Chicago Bulls. But first, let's talk about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march to the Super Bowl. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. So don't wait to take advantage of all these new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. Listen to Locked On Now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watch it on the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. The Raptors beat the Bulls 127-120 in overtime, getting 20-point nights from 4 different Raptors, including rookie Scottie Barnes, who we'll talk about here in a moment. The end of this game was pretty wild, so just bear with me again. This is sort of going to be a Lakers-Clippers thing. The Raptors go up 10 with 5 minutes and 50 seconds left in regulation, but then DeMar DeRozan goes on his own personal 6-point run, ties the score at 112 on a jumper with 47 seconds left. Okay. So then Fred VanVleet loses the ball out of bounds, and after the official initially rules it in Toronto's favor, Chicago challenges the ruling. It's successful. They get possession. The Bulls hot potato the ball around before Nikola Vucevic barely gets a shot off, but he scores with 8.6 seconds left. Then on the next possession, VanVleet misses on a drive, but Barnes was there to tip it in to tie the game, send it into overtime. Barnes comes up big again in overtime, scoring a go-ahead basket with 1:44 left. And Gary Trent Jr. puts the game away with a dagger 3. It was another fun one in Toronto, Adam.
I feel like you undersold the Chicago bucket at the end of the game of regulation, because you said about hot potato. I don't know if it was hot potato. It was a ricochet. This was a
better word.
Yeah, it was like a pass that just bounced off of Zach LaVine and into Vucevic's hands. And I'm not sure he shot the ball. I'm putting air quotes up right now. You can't see me, but I'm not sure he shot it as much as he just sort of like knocked it into the basket. So it was a completely chaotic play that worked out brilliantly for Chicago. And maybe in a more perfect universe would have completed a incredible comeback, but it really only extended the suffering for Bulls fans who had to lose in overtime. But it was a good game. It was a really good finish.
Gary Trent Jr., by the way, I mentioned that dagger 3 in overtime. Unfortunately for Gary Trent Jr., his 5-game streak of scoring 30-plus points came to an end. He only had 16 points, but you could argue had maybe, I don't know about the most important points in the game because he didn't tie the game at the end of regulation, but he had the dagger 3 at the end. I mean, that dude, he's as much of a reason for Toronto looking good as anybody lately.
I like him a lot. And by the way, you mentioned the 3. It actually came off of a Gary Trent steal, and that led to a Gary Trent 3 for a win. So it was really 2 great plays in one sequence there for him. And I agree with you. By the way, he gave us the best moment of the week in the NBA. I think it's the best moment. Did you happen to catch this when he was on the Zoom call and all of the reporters thought that it had froze? And all the reporters are saying, hey, I think something's frozen. And the PR director had to step in and say, no, it's Gary's just not moving. He did the entire media sequence without moving a muscle. They thought the computer froze. So it was a great one.
That's excellent. That happened. Miami Heat played the Spurs tonight. And it turns out that it was the same thing. And just nobody had Eric Spoelstra just wasn't moving, and they just ended it because nobody was asking questions because we thought it was frozen. So no pregame media session happened.
The
That was
Zoom
fun.
era, man.
Zoom
Speaking
era.
of the Zoom era, it's so jarring seeing Toronto, man. I mean, because Toronto obviously doesn't have fans in the stands, so you
Yes.
see the empty arena, and when we all got acclimated to it last season, like where we just were used to it, and in the bubble, we were used to it. But when you go from having fans, like watching the Laker game or the Hawks game or whatever, and then you flip over to that one, you really realize how crazy and how different that environment is.
It's really weird. And it's weirder now somehow. You would think it would be used to it, but I always thought it would be weird going back to full arenas. I was like, this is going to be jarring
Right.
going back to full arena. And it wasn't, because my entire life I've been watching full arenas. It wasn't as weird as I thought it would be. This is weird. That was weird,
Yeah.
especially when everybody else isn't having to do it.
There was one other note I have from this game, and that was that there was a really cool moment. This was Bulls Raptors. So DeMar DeRozan back in Toronto playing against his old team. And it was a big occasion because Fred VanVleet finds out, he's going to be an all-star. And he becomes now the first undrafted player to be an all-star since, do you know? Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace, the last undrafted player to be an all-star. So he comes over and they shared a really cool hug. I mean, there was a video that the Raptors put out of the team celebrating him when he got the news. So it's just a cool moment. I like these stories of unlikely all-stars and former players celebrating with them. It was just neat to see.
One other note in terms of the standings, this loss for the Bulls drops them into a virtual tie for first place with the Miami Heat for number 1 seed in the East. And that's the team we're going to talk about now. Let's go to San Antonio. Tyler Hero for the Heat scores 24 points. Bam Adebayo adds 18 points and 11 rebounds. The Heat cruise against the shorthanded San Antonio Spurs, who were without Jakob Poeltl and DeJounte Murray. They win 112-95. In Kyle Lowry's return, Lowry missed 9 straight games for undisclosed personal reasons. Didn't offer much explanation post-game other than that he was going through a tough time and that things were more important than basketball, and obviously that was the case. But for the Heat, Lowry's return reunited the starting five for the first time since Thanksgiving weekend and helped them snap a 3-game losing streak. So the Heat, they have Kyle Lowry back, and they're still in a tie for first place in the Eastern Conference.
That stat you just said, first time since Thanksgiving, you just tell me that for any team. They haven't had their starting lineup since Thanksgiving, and now here we are in February. I'd say, okay, well, they're holding on. They're hanging on. They're in the play-in. They're doing this. The number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference? How insane. Like the job Eric Spoelstra is doing over there, and just that is the Heat are in many ways the best example of how to handle this crazy season. The fact that they could be 33-20 with that crazy stat line.
There's a lot of great coaching jobs happening in the NBA, and I don't know if I'm biased because I'm covering Eric Spoelstra every day, but I can't imagine him not being the favorite at this point for Coach of the Year. I think
he has to be.
He's got the narrative arc, the whole challenging and the winning part of it. That's kind of the formula. Let's go to San Francisco, where Klay Thompson hit his first 7 shots, including his first 6 3-pointers on a way to 23 points and 7 assists, and the Warriors beat the Kings 126-114 for their 8th straight win. But the highlight sequence of the game, Jonathan Kuminga flies in the air with this weird in-between-the-legs pump fake dunk thing. The Warriors get a stop, and then Klay Thompson comes back on the other end, drains a leaning 3 to cap a 16-3 run that broke this game open. The Warriors, still without Draymond Green, they keep rolling, and they're getting contributions from guys like Klay Thompson, coming back from obviously 2 major injuries, and rookies like Jonathan Kuminga.
Wes, I did a podcast maybe 2 weeks ago with this guy, and he tells me we should be worried about the Warriors. We should be panicked. We should be very concerned about the Warriors. Oh, that's right. It was you on this very show. And you weren't wrong. The Warriors were struggling. But here we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-game winning streak for the Golden State Warriors. I think they probably have their groove back, even without Draymond Green back in the lineup. People keep asking me, like Phoenix, are they the number 1 team? Watch them. They're so dominant. They have so few weaknesses. And I keep thinking like, yeah. But I just remember when the Warriors had Draymond early in the year, they were number 1 defense. They were destroying teams. And then I look at them get an 8-game winning streak without him. And I just think, I still think the Warriors are this team that has the highest ceiling on this year.
I mean, look, I'm not saying, I never said they should panic.
I'm
They're
teasing
obviously
you,
very
man.
good.
I'm teasing you.
I know, but
like,
okay, you beat Sacramento, you beat San Antonio, you beat Houston a couple of times, you beat Skeleton Crew, fake Brooklyn Nets. All right, 8-game win streak's impressive, but like, okay.
Everybody's beating Utah right now. They beat them.
Everybody's
That's
beating
true.
Utah.
Dallas, Minnesota. Those are 2 good wins. There you go.
Those are good wins. Okay, so it's like a 2-game win streak. All right. Don't come at me, Warriors fans. I'm just joking around. Another fun one in Detroit. This is where we'll end our night, where the Timberwolves beat the Pistons 128-117, but almost let the game slip away. Minnesota led by 16 in the fourth quarter before the Pistons rallied, cut it to 5 with 50 seconds to go. Then Patrick Beverley hits a 3-pointer for the Timberwolves to put it out of reach. Anthony Edwards scores 25 points. Karl Anthony Towns finishes with 21 points and 14 rebounds. But my favorite moment came after the game. Again, post-game Zooms, when Anthony Edwards asked reporters to please pause their questions so that he could finish his McDonald's mobile order in Minnesota. What do you think his McDonald's order is, Adam?
Well, he said McChickens.
Right.
And I'm not familiar enough with this is sad. I don't know what that is. Like, did he mean McNuggets?
At first, I was thinking McNuggets, but they do have a McChicken sandwich, and so I'm thinking if he's pluralizing that, he's having multiple chicken sandwiches.
Multiple McChicken sandwiches. That might have been that. I was trying to decipher if it was nuggets or a sandwich, but okay, we'll say multiple sandwiches.
Multiple sandwiches. Yeah. Look, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Any other notes from this game?
Just a shout out to to Jordan McLaughlin tonight because he has a phenomenal line. 2 points, 16 minutes, 8 assists, a game high plus 19. I don't know because I didn't get to catch this game whether or not he was great, but it's rare you see a guy that is the team high with that kind of like stat line. I will say though, that just played Denver the other day. Early on in the season, great starting unit. Bench was very, unreliable. The bench has had a couple good games now where they've actually pulled ahead or extended leads for Minnesota. So I don't know if that's a long-term trend or just a short-term one, but it is a new trend for the Timberwolves.
I love you giving shine to the guys who aren't named Anthony Edwards, but to me, Anthony Edwards is the story every time Minnesota's on. I love that guy. He's awesome. He says he wants to be the best player in the league in 5 years or something like that. Whatever, man. I love the confidence. I love the McDonald's mobile orders. I'm here for Anthony Edwards. Coming up with the deadline next Thursday, we take a look at some of the most impactful midseason trades over the last few years. But first, let's talk about our friends at Built Bar. It's the new year, and that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or eating right, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easy to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good, you're going to want to eat it. Unlike other protein bars that can be chalky or waxy or taste like a chemical spill, you're going to want to eat healthy, but sometimes it gets boring. By week 3 into your diet, you might be thinking, this is just not worth it. I need some chocolate. Well, Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and most Built Bars contain 130 calories, just 4 grams of sugar, just 4 net carbs, and they're packed with 17 grams of protein. You compare that to a candy bar that usually has twice as many calories, 30 grams of sugar, dozens of net carbs. It's a no-brainer. And there's so many flavors to choose from. They have coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and many more. In fact, Built is always coming out with new limited time flavors. So check out Built.com often to see what's new. Here's our offer. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off on your order. Again, use that promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, every Friday here on Locked On NBA, we count down to the weekend, and today we take a look at guys who were acquired in midseason trades that are still having an impact this season. Adam, take us through.
Yeah, well, we know the trade deadline's coming up next week. We have that trade deadline show for you. You're going to want to tune in live. But you think about midseason trades, very rare is there like the big splash, the big one that, that changes the entire title odds. And doing this exercise here, I realized that's actually accurate. There's not that many guys that make this list. So I have 0 honorable mentions. I'm just going to have to get right into my number 5 most impactful midseason acquisition. And I have Tobias Harris, who was traded in 2019 to the 76ers. He's still there. The 76ers are still a true contender. That was a move that kind of became a mainstay for them. So he made number 5 on my list.
Look, Tobias Harris is the guy that's being mentioned in trade rumors now, right?
Yeah,
the Sixers, maybe he'll be a long-term impactful player that somebody else acquires at a midseason trade. But there's no doubt about it. Like, you remember when they initially acquired him, he was supposed to sort of complete this big 3 with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid or something like that. Hasn't quite worked out that way, but he's been a nice piece for them.
He's a good player. He's a solid player, and he has a good contract that if they were to move him, you could get something good for him. So we'll find out if that happens. Number 4 on my list, another not so big name, although it's my guy. This is like a Herb Jones level guy for me right now. I'm introducing a new person to the universe here of my favorite players. Jared Vanderbilt, former Denver Nugget, was traded. And by the way, the crowd goes crazy. He was traded as like just this throw in to a very small midseason trade anyway. Lo and behold, he has become a season changer for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's in their starting lineup. He's a rebound beast. He's versatile. He hustles. He does his job. He does his role. And that Timberwolves team has really come on over the last 25 games or so, in large part because of him.
I have him in my dynasty league.
Oh, so there you go.
I've been there the entire time. I love his length. I love his athleticism. I'm all in. Wasn't Chris Middleton a guy that was traded like that as a throw-in? Was that a midseason deal?
I'll tell you, every week I get nervous that I miss a big name in this power rank or a big one. So maybe it's entirely possible he was, but we're going really far back there. Have you added, speaking of your dynasty league though, have you added my guy Herb Jones? I mean, 3-4 steals a night.
You know what? I missed out on him. Oh, somebody beat me to it. It's a deep dynasty league. There's like literally 30 people in it. They probably drafted Herb Jones. There's one guy that just drafted like every rookie. I don't even. So he probably had Herb Jones from. Yeah, he's
the Sam Presti of the league, huh?
Yeah, and I can't stand him anyway. Who's your next guy?
Number 3 on my list. This is really a 3-person list that had 2 honorable mentions. Number 3 on this list for my Denver Nuggets, we got Aaron Gordon, who was traded last year at the deadline. Immediately made a major impact on that Nuggets team. They did not lose with him on the roster until Jamal Murray gets hurt, and then everything has been darkness since then. But he's still playing very well in Denver. I know when he was traded from Orlando, there was a lot of questions. He had good stats, bad team guy. He's fit in as a very high-level role player for the Nuggets and has really shined as a big time contributor.
The guy that replaced Jeremy Grant. Now Jeremy Grant's on Detroit, and people want to trade Jeremy Grant, hoping that he could be like Aaron Gordon, right? So that means something. I'm not quite sure what it means, but I think it's something good for Aaron Gordon. I looked it up, by the way. Chris Middleton got traded in the summer, so he doesn't count.
Boom! Thank God. I'm sure there's another one out there I forgot though.
Oh, let us know. I'm sure there's something. All right, yeah, I like the list so far. This is good. These are like actual players that matter so far.
They are. The next 2 matter a lot. The next one I have shocks the world. Andrew Wiggins, big time contributor here for the Golden State Warriors, who I just said is the best team or has the highest ceiling in the NBA. And who would have guessed that he's like not just a fits in, but he's okay. No, he's a major part of that. He's a major piece of that puzzle. And I don't think too many people would have guessed it when he was traded for D'Angelo Russell years ago.
Yeah, it was kind of a shocking trade at the time. I remember being in Brooklyn when it happened, covering the team and not really thinking that they were going to be able to move D'Angelo Russell. And, you start hearing some stuff that maybe it would be for Andrew Wiggins. And then you're kind of like, really? You're going to do it for Andrew Wiggins? That doesn't really seem like it's a worthwhile thing to do. Why don't you just stick with D'Angelo Russell? Then they did it, and it's worked swimmingly for them. And I think they've always had the right intent with Andrew Wiggins. They looked at him as somebody who doesn't need to be a star like he was or was asked to be in Minnesota. And he's been really, really happy to just be like, oh, yeah, I don't even want to be the star. I'm cool with that. Like, let me just be a 3-and-D guy. He's played awesome defensively. He's making open threes. He's never had easier shots for him than he's had in Golden State. And credit to him. He's just taken on the role, and he's fit in nicely. And I don't think he deserves to be a starter in the All-Star game. I don't think anybody really does. But, good for him. Good for him.
And what's craziest to me is, Golden State is a high IQ team. Like you have to be able to think the game to be there. And I thought, he'll never get that part of it, or he'll just. I never thought of him that way, and he fits in there very, very well. Some great scouting.
They need his athleticism, and it's been really important. That was the biggest thing. He's maybe the most athletic guy on the roster.
Number 1, and this goes to a guy who actually played really well tonight, and we didn't even mention it when we were doing our recap. Had 30 points, 18 rebounds, 4 assists, and that is for the tied for number 1 Chicago Bulls, Nikola Vucevic, who was another midseason one who started this new era in Chicago. The first guy in, then, of course, all the other acquisitions in the offseason. But he was a midseason trade. At the time, we thought, what is this? Who knows what's going on? It was the first domino to fall, and now it all makes sense.
Yeah, weirdly sort of the vet now in Chicago.
Yeah.
He just got there. Look, he started the season off slow. He's looked much better lately. Obviously, with the 30-point game tonight, he's looking like the all-star that he was last season. And Chicago, They've lost Lonzo Ball. They lost Alex Caruso. But just like with the Heat we were talking about earlier, they've managed to stay and hang on. And a lot of that, not all the credit goes to Nikola Vucevic, but he's one of their best players. So some of it certainly does.
You know where some of the credit goes that we didn't mention? Another guy, he's knocking on the door trying to get into the club of my like all lesser known role players that are on the rise. Ayo Dosunmu has been really good in the absence of Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso, and this has afforded him an opportunity to play real minutes. He was playing a little bit before, but now he's getting a lot of minutes, and he's really looked good for them. So the guy,
competent.
He might be in the Herb Jones tier here before long. He's not there yet. He's knocking on the door. We'll see if he gets in.
I want by the end of the year, I want the Adam Mares All-Star role player All-Stars. We'll call them the Herb Jones All-Stars. That's what we're going to call them. The Herb Stars. The Herb Stars.
There you go.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us today. That's a wrap. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On NBA wherever you listen to podcasts for 30 minutes of the NBA's top stories every day. You can find me over at Locked On Heat and Adam over at Locked On Nuggets. Thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all of your gambling needs. It's free and it's available on all platforms. Have a great weekend, Adam.
You too.